Good evening and welcome to the Better FAFSA Scholarship and Paying for College webinar. My name's Nick Boudre, the Supervisor of Career and College Programs at St. Clair County RESA, also representing the Blue Water College Access Network this evening. Tonight, we're going to keep on moving to the next stop on the Winter Series 2024 that is entirely focused on financial aid and the FAFSA with a series of presentations, webinars, and workshops both face-to-face and virtual, dedicated to this vital step of post-secondary planning for life after high school graduation, preparing for next fall. Tonight, we're going to talk about the brand new, all new for 2024 FAFSA that launched January 1st with some of the most significant updates to the form and the process in decades. How financial aid and scholarships are extremely important in navigating the decision-making process, and then also highlighting the Community Foundation of St. Clair County and SC4's scholarship portals as well. Tonight, we have one of our favorite guests returning to our webinar that is no stranger, Joe Cassar, the Director of Financial Aid and Services from SC4. Joe not only is representing SC4 and supports students that will be attending there next fall, but she also supports all students and families throughout the county, no matter what their plans are after high school graduation. After talking with Joe, the audience can ask questions via the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and feel free to ask questions throughout the segment as well. So without further ado, let's get the night started with our guest, Joe Cassar.
Thanks, Nick.
Well, welcome back, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Joe Cassar is a Director of Financial Aid and Services at SC4. Joe, thanks for coming back. I feel like every year we discuss financial aid, but this year it's the most important thing. We've had a lot of changes to the launch. We've had delays. We had soft launches. We've had pauses for maintenance and changes. I feel like you and I are getting emails every day with some new announcement, some update, and let's take some time tonight to talk about it, why it's important for students and families here in the Winter Series.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me again, Nick.
Absolutely, Joe. Joe, let's just talk FAFSA and financial aid. What is it, and why is it so important for the senior year planning for all seniors, regardless of their plans for after high school graduation?
Sure. So the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And quite honestly, it's an application that is a gateway to more than $150 billion in college grants, work study opportunities, federal student loans, some state grant programs, and it will help students pay for their college education. So we want to fill out the application as early as possible. Let's see what type of aid we qualify for, and perhaps that will sway where we end up deciding to go to college.
So I think so often people confuse FAFSA with student loans, but you just gave a variety of financial aid that students and families will receive. And I often hear this as your award letter or packaging. What are those two terms, and what does that really mean then for students and families that fill out this application and then they hear that from the college and universities that they apply at?
Okay, so as you said, there were a variety of types of aid that I mentioned, and most students will think that they don't qualify for financial aid, but I guarantee you most will qualify for either a federal or state grant, an institutional scholarship, a student loan, or work study. As far as what does it mean and the awarding and packaging, once a student completes the FAFSA form, the Department of Education sends it to the colleges that the student lists on the FAFSA form and the state government. It's the college's responsibility to determine how much financial aid the student is eligible for and the various types of financial aid that the student is eligible for. So we will put it on our award letter, and we will state the name of the scholarship, if it's a grant, if it's a scholarship, if it's a loan, what the dollar amount is that they are eligible for, and the terms of how it will be dispersed. So there may be a student or parents looking at it who don't necessarily need to take out a student loan or don't want to. Well, you could refuse that part of the award letter and look at and accept the free money, right? The money that we don't have to pay back. So it's truly there to assist the student in how can you meet the college expenses that you're about to incur.
All right, Joe. So I got a bunch of notes. I always take a lot of notes when you and I talk about this. So, you know, they're gonna get in my mind, in my understanding of things. So the FAFSA just gathers information from us. We answer the questions, we provide information, and in doing so, that will then qualify us for the financial aid from the institutions. And in terms of, and you said it, packaging, it's gonna qualify you for this, it's gonna qualify you for that. You're gonna get so much of this scholarship, whether it's from the state or the college or university. You qualify for this grant, which you don't have to pay back. That's free money. And so I don't think a lot of people understand that financial aid is this large offering of, and it really is personalized to the student and the family's needs and where they're applying to and where they plan to attend.
Absolutely. And what I always encourage students and families to remember is that financial aid consists of grants and scholarships. So the free monies, we call it gift aid. We don't have to pay it back, right? And then the work study opportunities or the loans called self-help aid. I either need to work and get paid for the number of hours I work, or I take out a loan and knowing that I have to pay that back, and payment begins typically 6 months after the student graduates or quits going to college, at least half time.
And that's perfect, Joe. And that's why those are the first two, three, four questions I really just wanted to develop a conversation around. And I try to tell students and families, that's about it right there. This isn't, it has to be a big, scary step. That's what we need to know. Now let's talk about the application itself. And this year, and I mentioned in the opening of tonight, that it's called the Better FAFSA for 2024 and 25. And so now that we know what it offers and the individualized plans then for students and families once they complete this, let's talk about what this application means in terms of the changes and updates, so they're well informed of when they go on to fill this out.
Okay, well, basically the Better FAFSA, somewhat similar to the old FAFSA where it's collecting demographic information regarding the student, but when it comes to the income and asset questions, some of that will automatically be imported from the Internal Revenue Service. So oftentimes when students and families have completed in the past, they get stuck or hung up on the income questions, right? Known as the hard questions. It's no longer hard. It's going to be automatically imported from the Internal Revenue Service once the student and parent provides their consent. So it's a simpler aid application process. It will determine, as you said, helps the institutions to determine how much aid they're eligible for. It will provide us with what's called an SAI or Student Aid Index, and we will use that figure in determining what type of aid they are eligible for at our particular institution. That SAI will be the same regardless what college or university the student will be attending.
Perfect. So just to go back on a couple items that I think you hit on so much that I'm looking at these changes here off of the guide that you help us provide before the holiday season. So the income taxes will be directly transferred over from the IRS online, and that is called the Direct Data Exchange. DDX will replace the Data Retrieval Tool, DRT. And then a huge one that you just mentioned is the Student Aid Index, SAI, will replace the Expected Family Contribution, EFC. So thank you so much, Joe. Those are huge. That's a great terms and some key terms for students and families to understand. I also know that there's a kind of a change this year in terms of what the students will be doing and then what the parents will be doing. Talk to us about the term that they use for them and what that means for they're doing the same application, but in two different parts.
Correct. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that the student has what's called an FSA ID, their Federal Student Aid ID. That's going to be their electronic signature when they are dealing with the Department of Education here on out. And then a parent or possibly two parents will need to also have an FSA ID. So I encourage students and parents to apply for that right now. And they do that by going to studentaid.gov. And I need them to do that 3 to 5 days, a minimum of 3 to 5 days before they're going to fill out the FAFSA form. And then basically the student will log in again, once they have their FSA ID, to studentaid.gov. They're going to say, I want to fill out my FAFSA form, the 24-25 academic year. They start answering some demographic information about themselves. It will ask them, did you file a tax return? Yes or no? Are you going to provide your consent, your signature to submit this application? And they will say, yes, I do that. And then it will have what's called a parent wizard. So this is going to help the student determine who and which parent's income information needs to be provided on the form. So it will walk them through, they're going to answer accordingly. And then that parent is going to be considered the contributor. So for those parents who may have done this in the past, they may recall that the income that was used in the case of divorced or separated families was the parent who the student lived with most in the most recent 12-month period. Well, that's different for 24-25. As you said, we're seeing lots of changes, some as recent as 2 days ago. So the wizard will walk them through, helps them determine that. And then the student provides that parent's name, their email address, date of birth, social security number, right? And then they finish their part, they send it off, and then the Department of Education sends an email to the contributor and they have to log in, it will match up. And then the parent is answering questions that pertain to them only. They're not going to see the student information. Student's not going to see the parent information. They're going to give their consent to allow the IRS through the DDX that you mentioned to transfer their income information. And it's only going to be taxable income that is on our federal tax returns for the 2022 calendar year. And then they answer some basic asset information. They sign it. It's off to the Department of Ed, and then they will process it and they will determine the SAI. And then that's where things are going to start to change and get a little bit tricky.
Well, I don't want to get into that yet, but we're going to get there in a couple of questions. But let's review a little bit of that because that's a big change as well. So it's kind of a partnership, with this application this year. The students need to complete their part, but they do need some information from their parents. So they're going to have to get those few things together, complete it, and then that'll go off and an email be sent then to the parent/contributor to perform their section before the application then can be submitted officially to the Department of Ed. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Perfect. I spoke to a lot of families that have done this, and they, the process, there's been some bumps in the road, some delays, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback that, when the student and the family operates on that plan right there, it's pretty quick, it's pretty clear and concise. They a little bit of delay waiting for it to be sent to them to complete their portion, but they're pretty happy with it, don't you think?
Absolutely. As of end of last week, beginning of this week, over 3.1 million FAFSAs have been submitted and are correct.
Yeah,
yes, there are still some bumps in the road. There are some issues that the Department of Education is trying to figure out, but it will, if families run into challenges for 24-25, I'm willing to bet somebody a coffee that by 25-26, it'll all be figured out and those challenges will no longer exist.
Yeah, they're getting them all ironed out as you and I speak. So one more question. Then I want to talk about that information you and I just got here in the last 24 hours. So we talked a little bit about this, but by completing this FAFSA and doing exactly what we just talked about, there's some programs that are new and have been around for a while. Some very key programs. What are those programs that students need to know about, especially the scholarship one that just came out last year?
Right.
What are some programs that students, it's an incentive, fill this out and see what you qualify for with these programs.
Absolutely. So as I said, we're applying for federal money, state money, and institutional money when we're filling out the FAFSA form. So last year in the state of Michigan, Governor Whitmer put into place what's called a Michigan Achievement Scholarship. That scholarship started with the class of 2023, so last year's seniors. And it does look at the FAFSA information, but the student is eligible for a scholarship. The amount, it depends on, are they going to a community college, a four-year public, or a four-year private, as long as they're a Michigan resident attending a Michigan college or university and enrolling full-time, which is generally 12 credit hours. So for example, at a community college, that student could be eligible for $2,750, and that's for the year, right? At a private institution, they could be eligible for $4,000. And at a four-year public, they could be eligible for $5,500. And the better part of it, in my mind, is, Nick, they can get it for up to 5 years, right? Once they receive
Wow.
their bachelor's degree, they're not eligible. But if you take and it's a combination of 5 years for any of those. So if they're transferring institutions, whatever the case may be. Well, let's look at a four-year public institution, for example. 5,500, multiply that by 5 years if they need an engineering or that extra semester, right? They could potentially be eligible for what, almost $27,000? That's a lot of money. And
Yes.
all they have to do is fill out the FAFSA, have an SAI index for the class of 24, 25. So for this year's senior, under 30,000. And then it will be determined, there's a first dollar, last dollar component, but don't worry about that. The financial aid office worries about that.
Yeah, let us worry about that. And I think that's such a good point, Joe. You said, that's a lot of money. And instantly you think that's a lot of money, but why do we have to talk about that? That's a big part of this planning process. If you look at how much money you're going to receive in the financial aid by filling out the application, that goes into decision-making process of which college is right for me. Is it attending a community college to cut down on that cost? I mean, SE4 is a phenomenal college for all students to attend, not just in St. Clair County, but am I going to go to SE4 for 1 to 2 years and transfer to a 3-to-1 program, or and get an associate's, or am I going to go away to a 4-year university or trade school right away? That number is a number that is key for that decision-making process. And that's where, yes, it's great to see how much I get, but it also goes down the road on how we're going to decide these plans as we get close to graduation, aren't we?
Absolutely. And oftentimes you and I have talked about, get your gen eds out of the way, get your math, your English and all that out of
Yes.
the way, get your Michigan transfer agreement, 30 credit hours transfers to just about all of the four-year publics in the state. And then if you need to, if you're going to transfer for your four-year degree, go ahead and do so. Actually, one thing that I looked at yesterday and this morning, and it was actually a little sad, is, like I said, it was available last year. The student has to initiate that Michigan Achievement Scholarship within 15 months of graduating from high school. So let's look at the class of 2023 for a minute, last year's seniors. If they haven't enrolled yet, if they do not enroll by next fall, so fall of 25, when this year's class, fall of 24, sorry, when this year's class will be enrolling, they're no longer eligible for that Michigan Achievement Scholarship. They just lost it. So they have to initiate it. You have to go to a Michigan school full-time, have the qualifying SAI within 15 months. So I have the list that I got from SE or from the state for my students. I had 146 students who at one point identified that they were going to go to SE4 who have not come. Now, maybe they went elsewhere, but I don't know that. So they potentially could be missing out if they don't enroll by fall of 24.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta take a look at that, see what's best for you, what pathway, what plan it is. and execute it, because the money's out there. We, every year we see the Pell Grant, now these scholarships with millions being left on the table. And I think down the road, it's okay if that's when you're deciding to pursue these goals, but you don't want to leave that money on the table. You want that money in your hands and as part of your plan. Well, Joe, I'm going to
Absolutely.
talk a little bit. The last question before we move on to scholarships is, I just want to touch a little bit, not spend a lot of time on it, but the delays. There's going to be a little bit of delay, but for these seniors, this is the first time them doing it. We just want to make sure that they know what that delay is.
Absolutely. So this year, students could begin filling out the FAFSA form, as you said, January 1st. So typically, once they fill it out, it goes through some checks and balances, with the IRS, Social Security, and then the information is immediately sent out to the schools. Well, because of the major overhaul, the Department of Education initially told all of us that the schools in the state would receive the information by the end of January. Well, on Tuesday, January 30th, one day before the end of the month, we all throughout the country received notification that the schools and state agencies will not be receiving the results of that FAFSA until mid-March. So it's going to push back a little bit when colleges and universities will begin going out with their financial aid packages, etc. So make sure you fill it out, get it well in before that, because once colleges and universities get it, let me tell you, we're going to start packaging as quickly as we can, looking at it. If we need to request something from the student, we're going to do that, because we want them to get that award letter in enough time to make a decision and be able to compare apples to oranges as to which college is giving me X amount of aid more, how am I going to make my decision? So don't be alarmed if you don't hear back right away. We're not going to get it till they are saying early to mid-March, but it's not going to be, okay, everybody gets it at one time. By March, we're probably going to have closer to 5 million applications out there, right? And they're still going to have to go through IRS, Social Security, and all of that. So they have already told us it will be coming out in batches.
Okay.
So sit tight. We're all going through this together. I know students and parents might be frustrated. Believe me, those of us who are in the aid community are just as frustrated, and several of us are working behind the scenes and trying to encourage some of your national associations, my national associations, for colleges to push back that May 1 decision day, or push back some of the dates they may have set in place because of the delay from the Department of Education.
All right, Joe. Well, I think that was just one of the best overviews, if not the best, that I've seen of not only financial aid and FAFSA, but this new better FAFSA that we've been working on for well over a year, getting ready for, and still working it on it daily. So thank you. Well, let's shift gears here. We are going to talk a little bit about something that they're interconnected, but it's just as important as a financial aid and FAFSA is scholarships. This is scholarship season, not only for students here in St. Clair County, but across Michigan, but across country as well. This is the time a lot of scholarships become available for students and families. There's a lot of scholarships out there that are statewide, nationwide, worldwide, but there's also a lot of scholarships that are local to your high school and districts, and some in the community. So we're going to spend about the next 10-15 minutes talking a little bit about some that you need to be aware of. And Joe, I'm going to bring you back on here to talk, give a few questions here about SC4 scholarships as well. So there's some scholarships that are available for students that attend. Let's talk about an overview of what scholarships are available, and kind of an estimate of how many and what variety do they kind of cover.
Sure. So students attending SC4 will want to first and foremost make sure that they apply for admission to the college, because that will give them access to my scholarship page. Our scholarship page is sc4.edu/money. So very simple. And there are approximately 106 scholarships that I have out there currently for the 24-25 academic year. And what I think is even more impressive is not only are there 106 different scholarships, but many of those give multiple awards, right? So some of them are going to be based on merit, some may be based on need, Some might be based on interests that the student have. I have some that are for graphic design, business, engineering, CIS, your computer information systems. So students will definitely want to take a look and fill out a one-page application. The application automatically matches them up for whatever scholarship they're eligible for. So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I'm going to have to read 106 different scholarships to see what I qualify for and make that decision myself. The system will do that for you. Fill out the application. It might ask you some different questions. It may come back and say, hey, Nick, you appear to be eligible for a potential scholarship. Do you want to answer a couple more questions or questions? Absolutely. And, it might be write a short essay. What are you majoring in? It might be a little bit more specific. You're going to do that. And then you hit submit and you're done. The priority deadline date for SE4 scholarship happens to be March 11th this year. So make sure that you do it beforehand. As I said, you have to be admitted to the college. So don't wait till the last minute and submit your admissions application, or you're not going to get your information in time.
Well, Joe, that is absolutely perfect overview of the scholarships for SC4. I spoke to a lot of seniors over the last year, especially when they were in 9th through 11th grade. And I always tell them part of the plan, and I mentioned it earlier, is you need to apply to SC4. And you mentioned that. That's a huge step for this. But also it's free. It is free for students to apply to SC4. So apply, it's free. But then part of that plan is they're getting to access the scholarships. And it's one page, correct? Did I hear you correct?
Absolutely. It's a dozen questions, Nick. It's simple.
It's simple, 12 questions. And then all of a sudden they see the scholarships. And once again, part of the planning process, I'm looking at SC4, or I'm looking at these colleges and universities for 4 years right away, or a trade school, or an apprenticeship. That's more information that I can see. I can see that dollar amount. I can see it from the FAFSA, and I can see the scholarships. And if there's a dollar amount, I always tell students, if it took you an hour to fill that application out, which I know this one doesn't, and you get $500, that's a $500 an hour job. And I don't have that job.
I don't either.
No, and that's a great job to have. So thank you, Joe, with that. Is there anything else you want to add? Maybe even some just advice for our students and families for this year?
Take a deep breath. Don't be afraid to fill out the application. We are there to assist you. So contact SC4's financial aid office, contact your high school counselors, the college access advisors, Nick's office. We're all here to help you. And we know that students who receive some sort of post-secondary education, whether it be a certificate, an associate degree, a bachelor's or master's degree, or even if they attend a vocational program, you're going to make more money by having those credentials behind you than if you were simply to just go find a job after graduating from high school.
Absolutely, Joe. And thank you so much again for not only that final remarks and the advice for students and families, but once again, hit on something you and I talk about so much. It's so vital to look at post-secondary education, formal training, and how that's going to lead to the career that's high demand and high pay. We have the data. The data's been there for years, and in the past few years, it's really increased on how important it is to have that plan for after high school graduation with that post-secondary education and training to get the career of your dreams. The BWCAN website at bwcan.org. Here you'll find a recording of this webinar as well as our previously recorded webinars and all your resources needed for career in college. This is the Better FAFSA Family Guide that was published before the holiday break of 2023. If you have not started your application yet, this is a great starting resource that's available to you on our website. It also discusses the challenges and changes to the application, why it's important, and some terms to know, and it will take you step by step on how to create your FSA ID for students and parents. It also has some information that you can contact if you need any help. On the right of your screen, you see 8 things to gather before starting your application. This, once again, will really help you prepare both students and families to prepare for your part that you need to complete. Rewind a little bit back to the fall. This is our fall career and college checklist that was published for the class of 2024. This was after our college applications and college advisor webinar on October 12th. And this is all the information that we discussed that evening. If you are looking at changing plans, you have incomplete plans, or you'd like to review to see where you're at in the process, this is a great checklist to monitor your task and make sure that your plan will be complete as we enter the winter months. The webinar, once again, was recorded and posted on our website. So if you need some help with college applications and you want to do so, whether it's virtually or from home, we have the recording on our website. You can fast forward, rewind, watch the whole thing. It's there for you to use as you will need.